5 years late for our honeymoon trip, I encountered an avalanche and got buried in the snow. In a panic, I called my husband, Ethan Scott. He sounded irritated, as if he felt I was of no help. Before losing consciousness, I saw him on the cable car, gently comforting my childhood friend, Jessica White. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital and found a black thong hanging on the vanity table at home. I struggled to suppress my discomfort and called my former employer. "Mr. Smith, are you still looking for someone?" Mr. Smith's voice was filled with excitement as he said, "Of course we welcome you back." After hanging up the phone, I suppressed my discomfort and used a broom to scoop up the thong and toss it into the trash can. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan Scott asking me, "Have you had enough fun?" He mentioned that he would be back for dinner tonight, which meant I needed to prepare a meal for him. In the past, I would have rushed out the door to buy his favorite dishes, but this time, I really didn't care much. A week ago, he said he wanted to make up for the 5 years of missed honeymoons. I was so excited that I immediately started packing my suitcase. He looked at me happily and said, "Honey, I've booked a skiing trip to Altai. I know you've always wanted to go." He held my hand and said with a smile, "You've been saving all these years, so it's time to relax a bit." I was touched by his concern. However, when I finally met Chang, I found out that he had signed up for a premium tour with his childhood friend Jessica White, and the travel agency was running a promotion that included a free charter flight. And I just happened to be the one who got it for free. Before I could even confront him about it, he was the first to say, "You've always been so frugal, adding another person would cost tens of thousands more, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that. Isn't this gift just perfect for you?" That said, he actually did think about me. Jessica White, who was next to me, looked somewhat frostbitten and quite pitiful. She quietly said, "Sister Emily Lynn, Ethan invited me because we are celebrating the successful launch of the new project, so don't read too much into it." She casually brushed her long hair, and the tips accidentally brushed against my face. She quickly apologized, saying, "Oh no, I didn't mean to." Then Ethan and I know, it should be Ethan, took the cable car first. I joined a free trip, but it didn't include the mountain cable car, so I had to climb up myself. After a difficult climb, I finally reached the halfway point, but then I encountered an avalanche. Snow came rushing from all directions, and I didn't have time to dodge it. It felt like an eternity, but finally, everything settled down. I struggled to reach my phone and dialed Ethan Scott's number by instinct. "Honey, I think I've run into an avalanche," I said. On the other end, I heard his somewhat exasperated voice, "If you encounter an avalanche, you should find somewhere to take cover. I'm not a rescue team. What's the point of calling me?" In the background, Jessica White's voice was sweet and whiny. "Ethan, the cable car is shaking so much, I'm a little scared." Ethan Scott spoke softly to comfort her, while all I could hear was the busy signal in my ear, echoing like a reminder of my own cold heart. Before the heavy snow fell, I clearly saw the cable car passing overhead, with Ethan Scott holding Jessica White tightly in his arms. Jessica White and Ethan Scott grew up together, but after she graduated from college, she went abroad and Ethan had never mentioned her in front of me. If it hadn't been for that day when Ethan's company had a team-building event, I wouldn't have heard two female colleagues discussing it while I was in a bathroom stall. They said that the new arrival, Jessica White, was a childhood friend of Ethan's, and that she was stunningly beautiful. After studying abroad, she seemed very different, completely unlike Ethan's wife. Then they suddenly lowered their voices and said that Jessica White had just talked to them about something. "Did she come to find you too? She's really not afraid of being embarrassed." The sound of their laughter echoed in the restroom and lingered for quite some time. As soon as I stepped outside, I ran into Jessica White, who was linked arm in arm with Ethan Scott, looking like a loving couple. When she saw me, she quickly let go of his arm and greeted me, mixing Chinese and English. "You must be Emily Lynn, right?" Ethan Scott's smile vanished in an instant, and a look of disdain appeared in his eyes. "What are you wearing?" My carefully chosen second-hand gown suddenly seemed inferior next to Jessica White's haute couture. I felt extremely embarrassed and didn't know how to respond. Jessica White, in a strange tone, tried to comfort me. "Ethan, how could you say that? This dress definitely suits Emily Lynn." As they affectionately walked past me, I heard Ethan Scott's low voice say, "Go back, don't embarrass yourself here." I was rescued by a passing climbing team. Unfortunately, they did a good deed without leaving their names and left after taking me to the hospital. I lay in the hospital for a whole week, and Ethan Scott didn't call or message me at all. Instead, Jessica White updated her status every day, mentioning how she encountered a talent scout right after returning to the country and expressing her gratitude for her boss's generous reward. While I was uncertain about my life and death, they were fiercely fighting in the room I had meticulously arranged. Even the slippers at the entrance had been changed to pink. The iris flowers I had carefully nurtured were wilting due to a lack of water. Suddenly, I caught sight of a familiar shade of red on the sofa and immediately recognized it as my favorite dress. Normally, I wouldn't bear to wear it, but now it had been torn apart, with the shredded fabric caught in the seams of the sofa. I was filled with indignation, but had no outlet for it when the door suddenly opened. Ethan Scott was momentarily taken aback when he saw me, his gaze quickly shifting to the empty dining table, his brows furrowing in concern. He asked why I hadn't cooked, even though I had clearly notified him in advance. Noticing my bad mood, he suddenly realized that the project had been progressing rapidly these past few days, which was why he had called Jessica over to work on materials together. He even joked about how someone like me, who had so much fun, didn't want to go home. He noticed that I was tightly holding onto the red dress, and casually mentioned how heavy the rain was that day, causing Jessica to get soaked, which led her to borrow one of my dresses. He probably thought I wouldn't mind such a trivial matter. But that red dress was a gift from him, bought with his very first paycheck, and I've always cherished it. Since we're too tired to cook, how about we go out for your favorite beef noodles instead? The bill from that Michelin 3-star restaurant on the coffee table still hasn't been dealt with. The amount is clear in my mind, it was in yuan, excluding service fees. He came over and tried to hold my hand, but accidentally brushed against the wound on my hand. I couldn't help but gasp, and my hand instinctively pulled back. His brows furrowed even tighter. Emily Lynn, when did you become so sensitive? At that moment, my phone rang with a familiar ringtone. Ethan Scott's furrowed brow immediately relaxed. What's wrong? He asked. On the other end of the line, I heard Jessica White's voice, shaky and teary. Ethan, the light bulb here suddenly burned out, and it's really dark. Ethan Scott's jaw tightened, but his voice was gentle. Don't be afraid. I'll be there right away. He noticed me staring at him and, showing a hint of discomfort, said, I have to step out for a bit, I can't have dinner with you. Can I really not go? He couldn't help but look at me with a curious expression, expecting me to cry and throw a tantrum like I usually did. His tone became somewhat unfriendly as he said he would go check on something and be back soon. After a brief glance at my hand, he lightly reminded me to remember to put on a band-aid. I never anticipated that he was going to see Jessica White, still thinking about leaving some concern for me. With the sound of the door closing, the house suddenly felt empty and silent. What I didn't say out loud is that when I experienced the avalanche, the overwhelming snow came crashing down, heavy enough to suffocate me. Everything around me turned white and I couldn't move. All I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat. That sense of despair and terror has left me too frightened to sleep with the lights off. Yet, he chose Jessica White. At that moment, Mr. Smith sent me a WeChat message asking if I was sure I wanted to join our company. He reminded me that our industry is currently experiencing a pivotal moment, and he is concerned that I might regret my decision. For the development of the company, Mr. Smith relocated the business from the capital to the south. Previously, I had to leave my job at the peak of my career to accompany Ethan Scott, which I regretted. Mr. Smith has been both a mentor and a friend to me, and he greatly values my abilities, so he made several attempts to keep me on board. However, I still chose to stay by Ethan Scott's side. Don't worry, Mr. Smith, I have already made up my mind. Once I finish handling things here, I will come to start my job. Ethan Scott still hasn't returned. In the past, I might have hurried to find him, but this time, I just wait quietly. Perhaps my phone was too quiet. Suddenly, Ethan Scott sent me a message saying there was a power outage in his area, and he is waiting for the electric company to fix it. He will come back once it's repaired. At that time, I was sitting in a chaise lounge reading a newly purchased book, and it had already been an hour since I replied to him. Maybe my response was a bit cold. The screen occasionally showed that he was typing, but in the end, there was no reply. As soon as dawn broke, I arranged to meet Ethan Scott at a beef noodle shop, hoping he would join me for a bowl of noodles. Ethan Scott arrived quickly. I pushed the bowl in front of him, and he frowned upon seeing it. Why is there cilantro again? He asked. Ethan Scott hated cilantro the most, and I used to help him pick it out, but now I had lost my patience. I replied casually, I forgot. If you don't like it, then just don't eat it. Ethan Scott looked at me in surprise and asked, "Are you angry because I didn't come back?" At that moment, Jessica White jogged over, her face flushed, and she threw herself into Ethan Scott's arms, apologizing, "I'm sorry I'm late." After finishing her words, she glanced at me, quickly straightened up, and added, "Sister Emily Lynn, please don't take it to heart. I've been abroad for too long and haven't adjusted yet." She even joked a bit about Ethan Scott, saying, "Honestly, it's so hard to find something that Sister Emily Lynn likes." Then she pushed a frosted square box toward me. "I'm sorry, Sister Emily Lynn, but I really haven't heard of this brand. I looked for a long time, and their designs are actually somewhat similar to things at home." Home is a high-end brand, and there was an implied sarcasm in her words, but I chose to ignore it. "Ethan really cares about you. He's worried you might misunderstand and get upset, so he specifically asked me to help pick a gift for you." Ethan Scott gently stroked her hair and said, "You've worked hard, my little lazy cat." Jessica White pouted, her light pink blush making her look especially adorable. She mentioned that as long as Emily Lynn wasn't upset, it was all fine, and it was simply because she had forgotten the notice about the power outage from the property management. As she spoke, she proactively opened the box and said, "You should try it on quickly. I bought it in my size, so I'm not sure if it will be too short for you." I noticed a silver necklace with a large zirconia dangling from it, shimmering with a cheap sparkle. Jessica White's hand rested on the box, and the large diamond ring on her finger made my eyes sting a little. I turned to look at Ethan Scott, who wore a smug expression, seemingly waiting for my gratitude. "No, thank you. I invited you here because I wanted to end this once and for all. I'll return this box to Jessica White, since it was bought in your size. Consider it a gift for you both. Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness." Ethan Scott and I started from scratch. During those challenging times, we could only share a bowl of noodles for a meal. This noodle shop witnessed the development of our relationship. Suddenly, Ethan Scott slammed his chopsticks on the table, making a loud noise that caught the attention of everyone nearby. "Emily Lynn, what's wrong with you? Just because I didn't come back last night, you want to divorce me?" At such a late hour, I couldn't just abandon Jessica, could I? I let out a cold snort. Am I really going crazy? Where were you when I was struggling for my life in an avalanche? Where were you when I lay in the hospital, feeling desperate and helpless? Ethan Scott's face suddenly turned pale, his lips parted and closed as if he wanted to say something but then held back. Jessica White stood up, tears still staining her cheeks, and said, "It's all my fault, Sister Emily Lynn. I caused you to misunderstand Ethan." She made as if she were about to kneel. The people at the nearby table began to whisper, their voices gradually rising, criticizing the act of forcing a young girl to kneel in the morning. It was truly outrageous. Compared to my bare face, her expertly applied makeup made her look even more pitiful. Jessica White was even more emotionally charged upon hearing this, her voice breaking with cries. Ethan Scott stood up and embraced her, asking, "Why are you kneeling to her? It's her jealousy that has nothing to do with you." Jessica White was on the verge of tears, and Ethan Scott immediately picked her up, his expression darkening as he said, "Look at what you've done. Once you calm down, you need to sincerely apologize to Jessica, otherwise, I won't forgive you." The gazes of everyone in the noodle shop left me feeling exhausted. When I got home, I was getting ready to pack my bags and leave. Just as I opened the door, the phone rang. My grandfather's voice made me feel anxious. I said, "Take your time, don't rush." After finally making out what he was saying, I grew anxious as well. "All right, I'll bring the money right away. Tell them to wait for me." After hanging up the phone, I began searching around the house. I was so anxious that I repeatedly entered the wrong password before finally managing to open the safe. Inside, there was only a dark blue velvet box and a gemstone certification. The box was empty, and the certificate indicated the purchase of a high-quality diamond weighing 5 carats, which was just the right size for the one Jessica White was wearing today. I didn't have time to dwell on that and continued to dig through the contents, but I simply couldn't find what I was looking for. At that moment, I was anxiously flustered when Ethan Scott suddenly came back. He looked around at the messy room and frowned, asking, "What happened here?" I hurriedly stepped over the clutter and approached him, asking, "Where are my things?" He seemed a bit annoyed and replied, "What things?" Ignoring his response, I grabbed his collar and said, "The passbook. The one I kept in the safe. Don't pretend you don't know. Hurry up and give it to me." He irritably pushed me aside, adjusted his somewhat disheveled collar, and wore a look of indifference. "Oh, the passbook? It only has 500,000 in it. You really treat it like a treasure by putting it in the safe." He scoffed and mentioned that Jessica had her birthday a few days ago. "You know I've invested all my money, so I can't withdraw it in time, which is why I need to borrow yours temporarily. All of my bank card passwords are his birthday, which used to be a testament to our love but has now become a knife that cuts deep." A surge of anger erupted within me, almost overwhelming me. "You actually used the 500,000 I saved for so long to buy a diamond ring for Jessica White? Don't you dare tell me you forgot what that money was for." He seemed a bit taken aback by my expression and said not to get worked up, that it was just 500,000 and he would pay me back next month. "Besides, we are husband and wife. Is it really necessary to be so clear about our finances?" He used to say that his money was mine, but now he feels that I'm calculating too precisely. However, I can't wait until next month. Confusion filled his slightly narrowed pupils as he asked, "What do you mean by you can't wait any longer?" At that moment, tears streamed down my face. She was still waiting for me, and I was about to disappoint her. Ethan Scott appeared flustered, and his tone softened as he reached out to hug me, saying, "Don't cry. Let's find a way to solve this together, okay?" After 5 years of marriage, he rarely calls me his wife, but at this moment, I can only feel irony. I struggle to push him away, my face bearing the calm that follows anger. "Ethan Scott, are you ready with the divorce agreement? When I was 10, my dad told me that my mom had passed away, but he soon remarried. It was my grandfather who stopped me on the way home from school that made me realize my mom was actually alive. She just had uremia. My dad didn't want to pay for her medical expenses, so he chose to get a divorce. I know that everyone has a selfish side, so I don't blame him. It's just that I can't be that cold and heartless myself. My grandfather's pension isn't much, and I can only squeeze out a little money for my mother's dialysis treatment from my meager living expenses. Over time, I even have to compare prices when buying potatoes. When I met Ethan Scott, he had just graduated from college. We first met while interning at the same company. I took out my phone and asked him, "Hey, do you have Pinduoduo?" He scratched his head and, a bit shyly, asked me, "What's that?" I was really happy, new user alert. So, we added each other on WeChat. Ethan Scott comes from an average family, and living in the talent-rich capital city is a bit challenging for him. When it comes to job hunting, he finds himself troubled over finding a suitable suit. I confidently promised him, "Leave it to me." Having saved money over the years, I am already familiar with various clothing wholesalers and second-hand shops in the city. After 3 days of searching, I finally found a suit that was both appealing and reasonably priced. When he put it on, I couldn't help but be mesmerized. I usually just knew he was tall with long legs, but I didn't expect him to look so handsome in a suit. Perhaps I was staring for too long, as his face turned a bit red. "Emily Lynn, it's wonderful to have you by my side." Being with him felt like the most natural thing. That day he confessed his feelings to me, his eyes sparkling like stars, while you were there holding your phone, asking for my help. It was truly adorable. After dating for 3 years, it was time to consider marriage, so I couldn't help but confide in him about my family situation. He looked at me with concern, held me tightly, and rested his chin on my shoulder, reassuring me that he would face the future together with me. In the beginning, we weren't well off. After we got married, I worked hard to cut my own expenses but was quite generous with him. 5 years have passed, and his clothes fill 3 wardrobes, while mine only take up 2 compartments. The money for my mom's medical treatment was also earned through my part-time jobs. I didn't want to add to his burden. However, the 500,000 I managed to save up finally ended up as a diamond ring in another woman's possession. On the day of my mother's funeral, it snowed in the capital. The cold wind was dry and biting, and I felt an emptiness in my heart. After years of suffering from illness, perhaps for her, this was a kind of release. Ethan Scott learned the news somehow and hurried over. Dressed in a flashy suit, he looked like a peacock displaying its feathers. When he noticed me staring at his outfit, he felt a bit embarrassed. He had just accompanied Jessica to a themed party and hadn't had a chance to change yet. Realizing he had misspoken, he quickly added that it was a company event. I didn't respond much and chose not to engage with his comment. He caught up to me and said urgently, "Honey, I'm sorry. I really didn't expect to match with a kidney donor at this moment. The source of kidneys is actually quite rare. My mother spent several years searching before she found a suitable one. I put that money in a safe and didn't even dare to touch it. I had emphasized its importance to him before. I took out the divorce agreement that I had prepared in advance and handed it to him, urging him to sign it. Ethan Scott was momentarily taken aback, a faint wry smile appearing on his face. I knew that this time I was in the wrong, but Jessica and I had grown up together. Before he could finish speaking, I interrupted him, saying, "I don't care about your past with her. Ethan Scott, this is your last chance to maintain some dignity. I hope we can part ways gracefully." His expression shifted from red to pale as he replied, "Emily Lynn, how could you be so heartless after 8 years together?" I looked at him. Although 8 years had not left too many marks on his face, everything was different now. Snowflakes gently landed on his brows as I coldly replied, "The moment you chose to abandon me for Jessica White, my heart died. After 8 years together, I valued you even more than myself. Now that you've cheated, you blame me for being heartless?" Ethan Scott opened his mouth slightly, forcing out a response. I admit that when she left me to go abroad all those years ago, I was indeed a bit sad. But now that she has returned, all I want is to take revenge on her. Unexpectedly, the final retribution has fallen upon me, hasn't it? Ethan Scott, during our honeymoon, you abandoned me to enjoy sweet moments with her, even using my mother's treatment money to buy her a ring. Is this your way of getting back at me? You elevate rekindling an old flame to such grand proportions, but at this point, you don't even have the courage to admit it? Under my barrage of questioning, Ethan Scott's head gradually lowered. After a while, he lifted his head, the corners of his eyes red, and said, "Emily Lynn, please calm down. Let's talk later." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, his back appearing very dejected. After he left, the man next to me approached and slapped me hard across the face. Dad's hand stopped midair, a fierce expression crossing his face. "Emily Lynn, you truly have a talent for this. I've always said you haven't contributed a single cent to this family after all these years of working. Turns out, it's all been spent on this old person." He pointed at Mom's tombstone. "You've spent so much money, and in the end, it's all been for nothing." I gritted my teeth and covered my burning face, staring at him defiantly. "That's right, it's a pity I didn't inherit your cold-bloodedness." He smirked coldly and said, all right, you're impressive. Anyway, she's already gone, and I don't want to argue anymore. But you cannot leave this marriage." Suddenly, his stepmother Mia Smith appeared, her face filled with a sharp, cutting expression. "If you leave him, do you think you'll find someone better?" My father has always been very pleased with Ethan Scott. Over the past few years, he has received constant promotions and finally made it to the company's management team. My father boasts about him all around the neighborhood. "This is between him and me, it has nothing to do with you." He sneered, his face filled with sarcasm. "Then you should refund me for all the money I've spent on you over the years." In order to escape all of this, I moved to a southern city where my new company is located. The southern climate is humid, with a spring-like feel throughout the 4 seasons. Amidst the lush greenery, the wounds in my heart gradually fade, much like the scars on my hand. I keep sending the divorce agreement to Ethan Scott's email, but I have yet to receive a response. All I can do is fully immerse myself in my work. I am a screenwriter, and recently, my short plays have been gaining attention. I adapted my experiences into a short play and seized the opportunity to gain some success. After finally saving up $1 million, I transferred the money into my dad's account and then published a notice in the newspaper announcing the severance of our father-daughter relationship. A wave of relief washed over me. It was my first time walking into a bar, and I felt a sense of novelty. For more than 10 years, I had been living for others. Now, I've experienced the enchanting lights and delicious cocktails, and I've realized that life can indeed be so easy and beautiful. After a drink, I felt a bit dazed. In my haze, a stranger approached me, took my hand, and asked, "Miss, how did you hurt your hand?" I suddenly snapped back to reality, quickly pulled my hand away, and slapped him, saying angrily, "You're behaving inappropriately." The man, looking wronged, covered his mouth and replied, "You've misunderstood. I just wanted to confirm whether you are the person I know." I took a few steps back and splashed my drink towards you, saying, "That excuse is just too far-fetched." A few strong men at the neighboring table stood up upon hearing the commotion. The man quickly asked, "I heard you experienced an avalanche in Altai not long ago, is that true?" I was taken aback and asked him, "How do you know that?" Upon seeing my response, his expression became more certain. It turns out that he is Jiang Shua, the captain of the climbing team that rescued me at that time. I do recall a bit about the place where you were injured. I must admit I was a bit rude just now. Under the dim light, a hint of embarrassment appeared on his face. I immediately waved my hand, took a tissue, and helped him wipe off the wine stain. I'm really sorry. Does your face still hurt? I felt a wave of guilt and really wished I could have been more attentive. Jiang Shua appeared completely unconcerned. I used the excuse of apologizing and expressing gratitude to invite him to dinner. However, just as we sat down, an unexpected guest arrived. After some time apart, Ethan Scott seemed to have lost some of his confidence. I pretended not to notice him, but he walked straight up to the table and said, "Emily Lin, is this the new employee you were looking for?" Jiang Shua felt that the atmosphere was off and was getting ready to stand up, but I pressed him down. I asked coldly, "What are you here for? Have you signed the divorce agreement?" He replied, "Why should I sign it?" He sized up Jiang Shua and said, "I'm giving you time to calm down. I've never intended to get a divorce." I couldn't help but laugh at his words as I slammed the menu on the table. "It doesn't matter. If you don't agree, I'll sue for divorce. Do you have any evidence?" He replied, crossing his arms and seeming to think I was just trying to intimidate him. But he forgot that I never do anything without being prepared. I opened my phone and showed him the intimate photo he took with Jessica White. He gave a contemptuous smile and asked, "Is that all?" Then I asked, "What about this?" At that point, he was completely stunned. He hurriedly explained, "Listen to me, I was drunk that time, and the photo is an ultrasound of Jessica White's pregnancy. No, we did take measures that time. How could there be a problem?" He snatched my phone to examine it closely. After a while, he suddenly looked up and accused me, saying, "You're lying to me." I smiled slightly and replied, "That's right, that picture is indeed mine, it's the evidence." I shook the voice recorder in my hand. He angrily snatched it away and slammed it hard on the ground, stomping on it a few times for good measure. Ethan Scott's expression showed his anger as he said, "Let's see what other evidence you have." I pointed to the side, where there was another person, and asked, "Do you want to deal with him too?" Jiang Shua looked back and forth between us, looking very innocent. It seemed that Ethan Scott suddenly lost his strength, and his straight back bent down. "Emily Lin, I'm wondering if it's too late to regret, but I really never thought about getting a divorce from you. Jessica White is just a hurdle in my heart that I can't get over. The person I have always loved is you. Can you give me another chance?" He raised his head, his eyes filled with hope. Just then, a cold voice questioned from behind Ethan Scott, "Is this what you call a business trip?" Ethan Scott turned around, his expression darkening. "Are you following me?" Jessica White stumbled over, pointing at me. "If I wasn't following you, how would I know you were getting so close to this person?" With a slap, Jessica White looked at me in shock. "How dare you hit me?" "That's because what you said was inappropriate." I turned around and slapped her on the left cheek again, and this time it was for my mom. I had no intention of stopping. Jessica White's face turned crimson as she rushed toward me, completely disregarding her image, but Ethan Scott held her back. "That's enough. Do you want to embarrass yourself even more?" Ethan Scott struggled to pull her out. Jessica White glared at me, continuously voicing her dissatisfaction, but was forcefully dragged away. In the moment she left, I suddenly felt a surge of clarity. "Be careful!" Before I could react, Jiang Shua stood in front of me, blocking my way. A muffled groan came from above my head. A drop of warm liquid landed on my face. I looked up and exclaimed, "You're bleeding." It turned out that before Jessica White was taken away, she had grabbed a teacup and thrown it at me, but it ended up hitting Jiang Shua, who was standing in front of me to protect me. A week later, I finally received the divorce agreement sent by Ethan Scott. Along with the agreement, there was a bank card with the password being my birthday. Ethan Scott left most of his assets to me. I've heard from mutual friends that after he returned, he was in poor mental health and made several mistakes at work, leading to him being reassigned to a non-essential position at the branch office. Before his transfer, he reported Jessica White for falsifying her academic qualifications, which resulted in her immediate dismissal from the company. The friendship we once had in our youth ultimately faded away over time. With my exceptional professional abilities, I have gradually established my position in the company, holding the copyrights to several popular short dramas and having set up my own independent studio. My assistant approached me with a stack of photos, saying, "Emily, we're about to start filming the new drama, and the director wants you to take a look at these first." Now, my name has become synonymous with popular dramas, and directors always seek my opinion before casting actors. As I casually flipped through the photos, I suddenly spotted a familiar face. I pulled out that photo and called the person over to meet me. Before long, a familiar voice came from outside, tinged with a hint of nervousness. "Mike, why did the screenwriter specifically call for me?" Assistant Mike appeared a bit impatient, saying, "Whether you come or not, it's a privilege for you to meet Emily." When she pushed the door open and stepped inside, the person in front of her was stunned. "It really is you." The newcomer was Jessica White, who had adopted the stage name Jessica Yates. She had also made some adjustments to her features, but I recognized her at a glance. Hatred was barely concealed in her eyes. I had thought it was just a coincidence of names, but I never expected such a twist of fate. "You're really something now." After realizing it was me, she set aside her concerns and directly pulled out a chair to sit down. "You called me here just to show off that you've become a well-known screenwriter?" Jessica White lost her job and has no other skills, so she can only interview for acting roles, hoping to make a living in the short film industry. I threw a script at her and asked what she thought of it. She flipped through the script for a few seconds, then angrily threw it on the floor. "Emily Lynn, were you doing this on purpose?" The story is about how the main couple falls apart due to a third party's interference, but after the breakup, the female lead achieves great success in her career. I chuckled, thinking it was just a common plot in today's short dramas. She was just projecting her own feelings onto it. If I wanted to support her, it would be hard for her not to become popular. Unfortunately, I've always had a tendency for revenge. I called my assistant over. "Jessica is a good friend of mine, and I plan to arrange a good role for her in every upcoming show." When I emphasized the words "good friend," my assistant immediately understood what I meant. In the next production, Jessica White's role is either a maid or a mistress. She doesn't have many scenes, just a few appearances, all of which involve her getting beaten. The director keeps filming these under Mike's suggestion. Finally, Jessica White couldn't stand it any longer. During a filming session, while everyone was distracted, she rushed towards me with a swollen face, seemingly intent on finishing something. It was then that I noticed she was holding a knife. Fortunately, Mike reacted quickly and lifted a reflector to knock the knife out of her hand. Jessica White was subdued on the spot. Her eyes were filled with resentment, as if she wanted to see right through me. "Emily Lynn, aren't you afraid of the consequences of seeking personal revenge like this?" I gave a cold smile and said slowly, "Jessica White, only the weak fear so-called retribution. My fate is in my own hands." Jessica White was prosecuted for intentional assault. The person who came to me seeking a settlement was surprisingly Ethan Scott. We arranged to meet in the lounge at the filming location. His appearance almost left me unable to recognize him. He looked unkempt with a scruffy beard. As soon as he saw me, his eyes lit up instantly. "Emily Lynn, you've changed so much." In fact, it wasn't just him who had changed, I had changed too. However, we have taken different paths. I no longer wear cheap market goods. Instead, I don high-end designer pieces worth tens of thousands, and I have a dedicated makeup artist to do my makeup every day. Only now do I realize that loving myself is the most important thing. "Emily Lynn, how are you? She didn't hurt you, did she?" He grabbed my hand and looked around, which annoyed me, so I shook him off. "Weren't you here to reconcile with me?" He gave a self-deprecating smile and said, "If it weren't for this, how could I possibly see you? Jessica White's father came to find me, asking me to persuade you. I know you would never forgive her." I smiled gently and replied, "You seem to understand me quite well." He snorted and mentioned that fraud, Jessica White, who forged her qualifications to get me to help her join the company, and now I'm caught up in this mess as well. He actually had the nerve to ask me to persuade you. It turns out there's such a story behind this, but I no longer want to get involved. When I saw the way he seemed intent on targeting Jessica White, I couldn't help but feel a chill in my heart. "Since you don't really want to mediate, let's leave it at that." Just as I turned to walk away, he suddenly hugged me from behind, making it impossible for me to move. "Baby, can you give me another chance? I know I was wrong. Without you, I really find it hard to get through the day. I can't break free, Ethan Scott. Let go." His warm breath was on my neck and shoulders, and I was trembling with fear. He whispered, "My dear, as long as you can bear my child, you will never leave me." I tried with all my strength to move, but I was completely immobilized. This lounge is usually for my sole use, and no one ever gets close. Despair washed over me, and I shut my eyes tightly. Suddenly, I heard a dull thud above me, and the bindings on me loosened instantly. When I looked up, I was delighted to see Jiang Shua. He threw a punch, and blood seeped from the corner of Ethan Scott's mouth. Anger flashed in Ethan Scott's eyes as he asked, "Who are you? What right do you have to interfere in my affairs with my ex-wife?" The sudden rush of fresh air helped me calm down. I quickly took out my phone and dialed 110. "Hello, is this the police? Someone is harassing me." After hanging up the phone, I took a few deep breaths and calmly said, "Since you have become an unhappy couple, I'll send you in to accompany her." Ethan Scott was taken away by the police. There are surveillance cameras in the lounge, and the evidence is clear. I sat exhausted in the chair, and only then did I remember that Jiang Shua was still beside me. I helplessly said, "I'm sorry, you always see me at my worst." He had already saved me 3 times. The last incident was a bit embarrassing, which is why I hadn't had the courage to contact him. "How did you find your way here?" A glimmer of jest flickered in his eyes as he said, "Since you haven't contacted me, I'll find a way to reach you, Emily." I felt my face flush a little at his words, but no matter what, I still wanted to thank you for saving me time and again. I was somewhat perplexed and didn't quite understand your intentions. "Emily Lynn, don't you really remember me?" He exaggeratedly pulled the flesh on both sides of his cheeks outward. "Take another look." I suddenly realized, it's Fei Shua. Hearing that familiar nickname, his cheeks flushed slightly. "I'm sorry, I really didn't recognize you before." Jiang Shua was my desk mate in middle school, and back then, he was a well-known chubby kid at school, often the target of jokes. "I didn't expect you to have become so handsome now." I truly mean it, but the blush on his face seemed to deepen. "If it hadn't been for you back then, I might have been bullied even worse." Suddenly, I remembered that when he was being bullied, I had stood up for him. In middle school, I was quite influential, and from that time on, Jiang Shua became the one I protected. No one dared to bully him anymore. "I recognized you on the snowy mountain last time, but after I got you to the hospital, my teammates called me away. By the time I returned to find you, you had already been discharged. No matter what I've done in the past, I really want to thank you." I looked at him, my face full of sincerity. He leaned in quietly, a noticeable blush on his face. "Since you're single too, I wonder if I have a chance." Seeing him looking a bit nervous, I smiled. No one can predict what the future holds. What matters is that I want to love myself more every day.